Hi, Linda. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Well, we're in season 1, episode 17 of the Front Porch Book Club.
The Front Porch Book Club is a podcast that we make twice a month.
And we dig deep into the relationship between characters and the worlds they live in.
Grab your book and iced tea and join us on the front porch.
So, Linny, today we're discussing Good Girls, Good Food, Good Fun, the story of USO hostesses during World War II by Dr. Meghan Winchell.
Oh my goodness, such a good book. She bases the book on interviews with soldiers and hostesses who participated in the USO, and she has a lot of research along with her interviews.
Yeah.
She looks at gender, race, classism, and how they impacted the USO, the women, the soldiers, and our culture.
Yeah, really interesting book. Meghan is a history professor at Nebraska Wesleyan University and also a good friend of mine. So I'm really excited to talk about her book with you, Linny.
Okay. Now I understand why there was all that research and footnotes at the back of the book. She's a professor. I did not know that.
And a history professor on top of that.
Okay, well that explains it, because I looked at my Kindle and I think it said like I have 25% of the book yet to read, and I'm like, this seems like the end of the book. Goodness gracious. So I knew a little bit about the USO, and obviously during the Vietnam War, of which I was alive, I knew about it, but I didn't know very much about the local clubs and what the hostesses did and how they were selected and the rules of the organization. But the USO stands for United Service Organizations for National Defense. And I did not know that either, which now helps me to understand like why the Ys, the Salvation Army, the Jewish Welfare Board, Catholic Services, Travelers Aid, how that was sort of a part of the World War I scene, I guess. And then we had the USO formed in 1941, even before we entered World War II, as a way to provide morale and recreation services for the military.
Yeah.
Nancy, what did you know about the USO?
I think we had about equivalent knowledge. The USO.
Bob Hope.
Bob Hope telling really, really corny jokes to the troops.
Sexist jokes.
Very sexist, very corny.
A little lowbrow at times, I thought.
Exactly.
But
for some reason, whenever I fly in and out of National Airport, I always see the USO signs there.
Really?
Why there are USO signs that I notice at National Airport, I have no idea. But I always think, oh, look, there's a USO here. What is that all about?
Well, I don't even know that I hear about the USO anymore.
I did have a vague idea there were some USOs in the US during World War II, one in Hollywood and maybe one in New York City. But I didn't realize the extent of them. So in the book, Meghan talks about at their height, and this would have been in 1944, there were over 3,000 USO clubs operating all over the United States, and they served 1 million servicemen a day, which is incredible.
She explains that there's a number of soldiers that are stationed in the United States. Mm-hmm. I figured all these people were in the Pacific and in Europe. I didn't realize the amount of soldiers that were here. Obviously, why they're in training, but still that we're stationed here that needed something to do.
What surprised me, too, is how important the USO was to those service members. She cites a survey that was done in 1944, and about half of all soldiers described the USO as having great importance to them. 30% of white soldiers and 44% of Black soldiers described the USO as being absolutely essential. Meghan does get into the different experiences white service members had versus Black service members. What do you think of that, Linny?
It was amazing to hear how important the USO was for these soldiers. There's just a lot of issues and directions that we can go in, Nance, because of the classism, sexism, racism. Before we talk about some of these things, I think what was really important was the military was behind this. And it seemed like they wanted something for these guys to do. They were with them all day long, all evening. And then when they were on leave or when they had time off, they would run to town and go to bars and prostitutes. And so VD was a huge problem. And so they had to figure out a way to reduce this, and public education was a part of it, condoms. So they had their own things going on to kind of address it. But they were really behind this. Let's have a way for them to have fun.
Yeah.
And how are we going to have them have fun? Well, I don't know. Somebody thought, well, women like to have fun.
I think it was more like, what would 18-year-old boys consider being an important element of having fun?
Oh, yeah, maybe it was that. Okay, so maybe the junior hostesses were the real draw there, but they had to do something that would be interesting enough to draw the crowds.
Yeah.
And something more fun than going to a prostitute. And apparently in World War I, this was a big problem. So I was glad the military was on this.
That was really surprising that so many days were lost to venereal disease during World War I. And they knew if we did get drawn into the war, we just wouldn't really be able to afford having so many soldiers sick. Of course, that was a time before antibiotics. So VD was actually a really serious and debilitating disease.
Well, I'm glad somebody had some insight, because all these guys were going to come home from the war and want to get married and have children.
Yeah.
So kudos to the military for thinking of a creative way to address this issue.
Yeah. But they did run into difficulties. There were some challenges that either the USO wasn't expecting, or you could say they really fumbled the ball. And part of that was that there was really no national policy around integration. And so they just let the USOs decide how they were going to treat Black service members. In the North, they tended to be integrated or have more services for Black service members. In the South, they might expressly prohibit Black service members from entering the USO, or they would have what seemed like pretty substandard alternatives in really hard to get to places that they could go to. But even in the North, there were white hostesses who refused to dance with Black service members. I mean, the whole thing was just, it was a mess. Of course, the military wasn't even integrated at this time.
See, I read that a little bit differently. So maybe we need to talk to Meghan about this, because I was trying to really pay attention to, as I was reading this, where these clubs were located. And as I was reading it, I was amazed at the racism in the North.
Oh, yeah.
There was Jewish racism as well. And then the Mexicans.
Right.
And then we have, what do we do with the Hawaiians?
Yeah, the Asian Americans. What are we going to do with those people?
And guess what? Then we have the Catholic issue. I mean, and then what are we going to do with the Catholics? Are the Catholics going to be able to dance with the Protestants? So the USO is struggling to deal with these issues as they start their wonderful policy of inviting all these white girls to dance with these white soldiers. And then they realize that their plan has some issues to it.
It just struck me again how pitifully the U.S. treated its Black soldiers during and then after the war. You know, the survey that I mentioned earlier, I think one of the reasons maybe the USO, given all of its drawbacks, was still so important to the Black soldiers when they could be admitted to a USO. The USO was really a safe place for them to be.
Right. And my goodness, these guys were putting their lives on the line for us. You know what was interesting is that Europe treated them so much better than we did in America.
Oh, it's shocking. Yeah.
The Brits opened their arms to the United States soldiers no matter what.
Right.
Do you remember seeing that the government banned those pictures to come to the United States?
Yeah.
They didn't want those pictures of African Americans dancing with white people in Europe. But you show how backwards we are. And we still are. We still have race issues.
Oh, yeah.
We still have racism. So we got a long way to go.
Yeah, that's for sure. And I also thought the classism was very important. They just assumed that middle class girls would be the good girls that should be allowed to dance with the soldiers, because the thought was lower class girls.
They had VD.
Right. Right.
Or they were pit ups, or they had VD, or drank, or smoke.
They wouldn't be good girls. No.
They wouldn't be good girls. I don't know that we were considered middle class. Maybe we were, but oh my gosh.
Linda, I think we were middle class.
Oh, well, okay.
We were just the kind of good girls they were looking to recruit, I think.
Oy, oy, oy.
And we would have dutifully gone and followed the rules and asked the soldiers questions. And
yeah,
that would have been us for sure.
Yeah, I guess.
Here they had all these middle-class white girls who were mixing with these service members who we wanted to support, but some came from the lower classes.
Uh-oh.
What is this? Middle-class girls socializing with lower-class men?
Well, they all look so good in their uniform, you'd have no idea. They were... They came there, they had their hair cut in the GI cut. They wore the same kind of glasses, the same kind of uniform. So they had these young kids all looking pretty good.
Yeah.
They did not know if someone was a farmer, if someone was upper class and went to the country club. There was no really way of them. They didn't see them in street clothes.
Right.
They didn't see them in communities. Oh, look at what car he drives. Oh, I know where his family is. These were people from all over the country. So you didn't know the family backgrounds. You didn't know anything.
Yeah. The one funny story that I remember is there was a USO volunteer and she ran around at her local country club set. She ended up getting engaged to a service member from another part of the country. And while they're corresponding and talking about their future life, he mentions, well, you'll be getting up early to milk the cows. And she was like, milk the cows?
Don't you get milk from the grocery store?
I don't milk cows. That engagement ended quickly, apparently.
Well, and it just shows how little they knew about each other. It's all this, oh, lovey, lovey, lovely. It's superficial in some ways, and maybe all dating was back then to a certain extent, but especially with people you didn't know.
Yeah. And in wartime, when everything is just a lot more heightened emotions and feelings, and you meet someone for 3 days and they're getting shipped out, and then you start corresponding. And
you're talking about the war, not milking a cow.
I did love all these interviews that Meghan did with people who had either attended the USO or the girls who had been junior hostesses. And those were the girls that the soldiers danced with. They were not allowed to dance with the senior hostesses, which were very old women.
Yeah, like 30s, Nance.
Right. If you were over 30, you were a senior hostess.
You were considered a mom to the boys.
That's right. No longer anyone that someone would want to dance with. After 30, it's all over. You're behind the counter serving the sandwiches.
Being the chaperones for the young people.
Exactly.
Sewing buttons, I believe she said.
Oh, that's right. Now that I could do.
Well, you're over 30, so you would have been very valuable.
I totally would have done that. I'd have been happy sewing the buttons, serving the sandwiches. That would have been great. The chaperoning part, I'm not so sure I would have been interested in that, but.
Well, some of those chaperones said, yeah, honey, you can go date him.
Yeah.
I give you my blessing, honey. Meet him afterwards.
It did seem that there were a lot of marriages that resulted from this USO club situation, even though, according to the handbook, it was not a place for dating. But it did seem that Meghan at least found quite a number of women who found their husbands.
I think it sounds fantastic. You go to the USO, you put on your very favorite pretty dress,
Yeah.
you walk some coffee around, and apparently a lot of ping pong.
Lots of ping pong.
And then being one girl for every 4 or 3 soldiers sounds like a really good idea too.
Yeah.
For an 18-year-old girl, I think, oh, that's a good ratio. And then the wax wanted to come.
Yeah.
And then they had those cute little 18-year-old girls in their cute little dresses that were floral and knee length, and they wanted to jitterbug. All of a sudden, the wax show up. What do you do with the wax?
Right. They're not servicemen.
So now all of a sudden, we're going to fight over the men a little bit in some of the areas.
Yeah.
But the wax seemed to have a little bit more maturity, maybe in some way. You know, they had a little bit more experience maybe behind them. They were in the military. The girls that were the USO, what was that starting like 16, 17?
I think you had to be over 18, but there were exceptions that were made.
Okay.
But it was 18 to basically 30. And it had to be unmarried girls also. If you were married, then you became a senior hostess.
Your life is over. You're going to sew buttons in the back room. But it was interesting. She shared a story of a person who was a USO volunteer, and then she became a wave. And then she was able to better understand, like, okay, this is what I was doing when I was a part of this USO thing. Now I know where these girls are coming from.
Yeah.
Because those girls needed to have fun too. My goodness, they were young and they were in the military and they were serving. But
talk about a time of tumultuous change. The USO comes along with very traditional ideas about the
cookies and cupcakes and ping pong.
Okay.
And the church basement. And the Y.
Okay. USO.
Which sounds like a fun time for me. I spent a lot of time in the church basement, and we had a lot of fun.
You know, I won't pass up a cupcake either.
Especially if you don't have to make them. Ooh, right. It's a cupcake. It's got sprinkles on the top.
Of course, I don't think the junior hostesses were allowed to eat. Do you remember catching that in the book?
Yes, I do. Oh my gosh, it's terrible. You know what? I bet you there was a couple cupcakes that just didn't make it because that one just fell on the floor. Oh, it got a little squished in the box. Yeah, we can't put this one out. Come on, girls. You had all that dancing to do. You deserved a cupcake.
Okay. So anyway, during this really tumultuous time.
Sorry. It's not. It isn't tumultuous time. It's World War II.
But when we're trying to figure out gender roles, USO comes along with this very traditional conception of how men and women are supposed to interact, what their roles are. But you have like Rosie the Riveter, who all of a sudden she is breaking new boundaries in terms of she is working full time, whether she has kids or not. She is earning her own paycheck. She might be living on her own. Then you have this brand new group of women who are serving in the military as waves in wax. And again, not to be a Monday morning quarterback, but the USO had no idea what to do with any of this. The one thing the USO was really smart about is that they left a lot to the discretion of the local clubs. So it seems like some local clubs really figured out how to navigate this, which is the good news. The bad news side, of course, is that there were a lot of local clubs that really made poor decisions.
Right. Okay, Nancy.
Yeah.
So between a wave or a whack, a Rosie the Riveter, or a USO hostess, how would you have supported the boys?
I think I would have been Rosie the Riveter.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I really wouldn't have wanted to work building the ships, and I really wouldn't have wanted to work in a munitions factory. There were a number of munitions factories out here in the Midwest because they put them places where if they exploded, it wouldn't blow up a whole town. It would just be the workers in it.
Oh my goodness.
I don't think I could do that kind of work, But I would totally be into running an office or working on a base in an administrative capacity or something like that.
Yeah, a lot of the U.S. hostesses did have day jobs. They were working full time and they were doing this as a volunteer in the evening.
And you're right. If I was 18 to 30 and unmarried, that's probably exactly what I would have done. I would have worked during the day at some sort of administrative job and then gone to volunteer at the USO at night.
Yeah, I think as an 18-year-old, I don't think I would have had the whereby-all to say, well, I want to work in the military.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to wear a bomber jacket.
Yeah.
And pants with cuffs.
They were such trailblazers.
I know. I'm really glad of the waves and the wax. I appreciate the work they did.
Yeah.
I don't think I would have been that person to do that at 18. I don't know that I would have had the vision for myself. I think that's fantastic. They were so important to the military and they were real trailblazers. Rosie the Riveter was a trailblazer because she was doing non-traditional work.
Yeah.
I think I would have been happy making cupcakes with sprinkles on the top as my full-time job and then going and dancing with the servicemen at night. I think that would have been a nice life.
Maybe you would have been one of the girls who lived at home.
That's what I would have done.
Maybe found a little something to keep busy, like in a retail shop or something, or maybe go to college. Actually, that's probably what I would have done. I still would have gone to college, I think.
Back then, in the 1940s, I don't think I would have gone to college. I think I'd have been looking for a man in the USO. I really do. I think it sounds like a great gig, especially because you still had the confines of, I'm not going to be in a place where I'm going to feel uncomfortable. Because some of these kids are 18 years old and my age, but some of these guys are going to be considerably older.
Right.
And so sort of that safety of, hey, look, there's a rule. I can't leave with you. Sorry, with a smile on your face and not feel like you're rejecting somebody. They gave an easy out for these girls to say, oh, sorry, the rules are that we can't leave with anybody or we're just here for the good fun. And that was the whole publicity behind it. It's just you come in, you play some ping pong, you dance, you have some fun, and then you go back to base. Clean fun, no expectations, but I would still be looking for the man. Which these girls were too. I mean, there was some selflessness in them. They're tired. They worked all day and their feet hurt after having to dance all night and whatever. But you know what? It looked like it was, from the pictures I saw in her book, it looked like a whole lot of fun. So I don't think at 18, I would have thought, yeah, I'm going to go to Europe and serve in that way. I would have stayed traditional, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I'll make the cupcakes. Reading this book, you had a feeling that these girls did this and they realized they were a part of the war effort.
Right.
They were volunteering. They were giving these boys a good place to be, a home-like atmosphere. They were entertaining them. They were having fun with them, but they didn't have to be a Rosie and they didn't have to be a whack or a wave and completely go away from home. I have to hand it to these women and the men for doing what they did.
Yeah.
She talks about the greatest generation. And sometimes I look and go, my golly, look at what they did. They changed the world.
Yeah.
But there were problems. And I liked that it was that side of it too. It's not just this glossy USO. This is what these girls did. And the soldiers, there were some really big problems like classism and racism and a lot of sexism too.
Yeah. The USO did provide a way for women to feel like they were doing something for the war effort. Because when you think about it, if it had been us just plopped in that time, we would have been thinking, well, our brother is off fighting somewhere. And look at all these other boys, just like our brother. I mean, this could be our brother. So we do want to support them. We do want to do whatever we can to win this war.
Mm-hmm.
It was fairly black and white by the time we entered that war, that
We needed to win. And we were on the right side.
Yeah.
It seemed a time where everyone said, we're fighting this and we're not going to step out until it's won.
Right.
And it's won good.
Right.
We're going to be there to the end.
Right.
One way or the other. You get a whole nation of people working towards that war effort. And these 18-year-old girls, 20, 25, they figured out a way to do it in their hometowns.
Do you remember Mom talking about when she was a little girl during World War II, her school would get buckets and go around town and farms and collect anything metal that they could contribute to the war effort, like nails or
scraps,
whatever.
Little scraps.
And they also harvested milkweed pods for the life jackets for the soldiers in the Pacific.
Oh, interesting. I don't remember the milkweeds.
Yeah.
I remember the rations, her telling us about the rations. That's why we ate those butter and sugar sandwiches, Nancy, growing up.
Maybe not the most healthy choice for lunch, but for Mom, white bread, butter, and sugar, the height of just spoiling us, really. No, you like the Lebanon bologna sandwiches the best.
Yeah, but there was a time, the butter and sugar sandwiches. Okay, well, we regress.
I can't wait to talk to Meghan about these issues of racism, classism, sexism. You know, the other thing I hope that we get a chance to talk to Meghan about too is she was on a PBS documentary about the USO, and she was one of the talking heads, along with George W. Bush and Bob Hope's daughter and Brooke Shields. I think that will be fun to talk to her a little bit about her experience.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow, that's impressive. I can't wait to meet her too. So stop by the front porch next time. We're going to welcome Dr. Meghan Winchell, author of Good Girls, Good Food, Good Fun. Nancy, that would have been us.
Listeners can get in touch with us by going to our website at frontporchbookclub.com.
Our episodes come out 2 times a month on the first and third Wednesdays of each month. If you like this show, be sure to leave a review.
Well, Lenny, I'll see you next time.
Okay, see you next time, Nance. Have a good one.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.